It's time for Planet Green.
We have launched.
We've completely launched. We've started the show, and it is Planet Green Trees. We're about to embark 2 hours of medical marijuana and marijuana reform.
Attention, ladies and gentlemen. The Planet Green Show is underway with your host, attorney Michael Komorn.
Alrighty.
I can hear you.
I think we're doing it live.
We're doing it live.
I think we are.
Welcome, everybody who started the show. We're doing it live. Planet Green Trees officially starting right now. Quiet on the set. You are listening to Planet Green Trees, episode number 519. Today's date is June the 10th, 2021. No Steve. This is what we're calling the show. No Steve, there are no printer guns. Is that what we called it?
Yep.
No Steve, there are no printer guns. By the way, it is Steve
There's
Miller's
also
birthday
printer
today.
karma.
By the way, it is Steve Miller's birthday today. We don't want to let that go unnoticed.
Happy birthday
Thank you.
to you.
Despite a lot of guesses that he's 42 years old, it's remarkable he's actually 50. Is that crazy?
You know, at some point you just stop aging, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, it's a mindset.
That's all it is.
I'm gonna
It's
come
a
back.
mindset.
How old do you see yourself when you look in the mirror?
40 tops.
All right.
Yeah. I think about like, I stop in my head at like 34.
There you go.
I think so.
That was a good time.
Yeah.
That was a damn
24,
good time.
34,
The 30s.
23.
The dirty 30s. Doing it.
The dirty.
The title was supposed to be. The title here was going to be, Steve, there might be an Easter bunny, but there are no printer guts. That's what I think about it.
Sure.
Tonight's guest, legendary Tour de France cyclist Howard Wooldridge, who also happens to be a retired police officer and one of the founders of what was LEAP. I understand he rode across the country on a bicycle. And that, of course, causes us to mention the announcement of our next show, podcast that we're working on, which is Attorney and Bicycle Enthusiasts podcast.
That and the Attorney Golf Enthusiast podcast.
Yeah.
That's right. We got those on the horizon.
Got those two on the hopper.
They're in the works.
the hopper.
It says
In the
Ben
hopper.
Horner here,
In
but
the
I think
old hopper.
it says Ben Horner on this list. Is he calling in?
No.
No,
invite him
not
to- if
tonight.
you're-
Not
If
tonight.
you're listening, Ben Horner, call in. We'd love to hear from you. Last time we got disconnected, and I think I got blamed for that.
Yeah,
When it was really Tommy's fault.
He wasn't able
No, it
to
was
dial
Joslin.
back in, or I mean, he wasn't able to dial in tonight. But he says he's going to come on in a couple
of
of
weeks.
All right, good.
Yeah.
And there's some rumors that legendary Thetford Township trustee, former cannabis advocate, now part of the team of the man, Eric Gunnels will be calling in. Apparently, he's written an ordinance that he wants to promote as a solution for the caregiving dilemma that seems to be existing all throughout the state. So we're looking forward to that. At 8:30, I think we have Howard Wooldridge, and then we'll deal with Eric Gunnels when we have to. Jim, is that
Yep.
the plan? Amanda?
That's the
Okay.
plan.
That's the plan.
All right, here's some topics we may talk about tonight, not in any particular order, and not even guaranteeing we're going to get to them. There seems to be some room for me to rant here, which I might. Number 2, Virginia launches a website to educate people about marijuana legalization. Law takes effect on July 1st. Number 3, how cannabis can impact anesthesia and surgery. Number 4, Ohio at 3 new qualified medical marijuana conditions. And these are the topics that are on our agenda for tonight, but I have this stack of papers over here from printing like a obsessed lunatic today, trying to destroy the environment, which include, amongst other things, police issues,
Yes.
which we're going to save for
Yeah.
Howard Wooldridge.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good discussion.
Some forfeiture stuff that we haven't really talked about. Labeling of cannabis packages. Apparently there's some incident
Yeah, that's a good topic, actually.
Hawaiian Punch gummies.
I want to talk about that one at
Yeah.
length.
Okay. Maybe we'll talk about that first. We got
I can't even
We've
print
got,
this damn thing, Jimmy.
I got a case here about assumption of risk. somebody got pounded in the eye with a tennis ball and their tennis career was over. Whose fault is it?
I don't know.
Ooh.
Not mine.
Something to think about.
Yeah. Property owner. That's what I
part of
think.
playing the
I
game.
think it's a property owner.
Juvenile Justice Task Force to examine the school to prison pipeline, or the school to prison industrial complex, which is thriving in Michigan. It's thriving so much so that they needed to create a task force to stop it from happening. You talk about that a little
Well,
bit?
that's kind of sad, actually.
Well, their task
to
forces
hear
don't
if
get
that's-
much done.
Well, first of all, the fact that they're able to pass some legislation to get it that is in and of itself a thing. They couldn't get, at the federal level some stuff. But they did, the task force of the jail overcrowding and the task force of the trial court funding system produced some, that's what I think all the
Yeah.
expungement bills were produced from that. I don't know. I mean, like the governor's like, we got a problem there. Give me some money to get a task force. Task force produced, and they get a bipartisan group or, neutrals, judges or whatever, even though that's not really. But we'll see what happens. But the fact that it was compelling enough that they would need to create a task force, I thought was remarkable. Again, we're not going to get to any of this, but just some topics that when it's time. There's a bill lifting a ban on food assistance for people with multiple drug-related felonies headed to the governor's office. This is in
Ooh.
December.
Wow.
Did people know about that? That that's a thing?
I don't know. I didn't.
I thought
know
those
about
types
that.
of things were stopping.
I
What's
thought so
that?
too.
Cutting
Cutting people's benefits because they use.
felony convictions for
Oh.
marijuana.
Wow.
We're gonna try to answer the age-old question: what are the safest ways to smoke cannabis?
Yeah.
It's a good
I
question.
think the viewers want to know things like that too, because well, we actually learned a lot when we were doing our diamonds.
Oh yeah, the various
Remember
forms of doing it right.
right. And it's fun.
Here we have. I pulled an article here. Delta 8's futures strong, as long as the government doesn't take it away. Question and answers with Vince Sanders.
Who's Vince Sanders?
And we're going to answer the question: who's Vince Sanders?
Yeah, that's like Colonel Sanders' grandson, or maybe.
Yeah.
He's some
Related
expert in his
some way.
field.
Oh, okay. Super.
You guys all heard about the metric going down?
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
that.
I heard that.
But it's not the first time. And there's always been complaints about Metric. Even before they were in Michigan, they did not have the most stellar of reputation as far as a user experience.
They got the contract.
They
Jim.
do. That's because they know how to do that.
There are
They're very
multiple
good at it.
states. There are multiple
Yeah.
states, and if I told you that a recently licensed individual called Metric and asked if they could bring caregiver product into the Metric when there was a question of that, and they said, "Yeah, go ahead and do it," and walked them through the steps of doing it,
No.
and that later resulted in a complaint
Yeah.
levied by the MRA. That's what I know about the Metric.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that from
Well,
the
they're not lawyers, right?
from the operators, they should know enough not not to.
They just know how
advise
to
you.
punch the keys, Michael. They don't know the law.
Also, it's interesting because if you are in violation of Metric technicality, it could result in penalties, fines, etc. But when it falls down, and they know that there's errors all the time. There's problems all the time. But when it goes out, it's like the governance of all people. If you go outside of it, you get problems. But when it goes down, it's like there's no governance. It's interesting.
I have patients sometimes that in the past that have called when Metric has gone down thinking that something went wrong with their medical marijuana card because the system, when they're trying to log into the dispensary, their patient number is coming up as inactive, inactive because it's all linked.
That's got to be an enjoyable 7 hours to receih phone calls for,
Yeah,
right? It's like, wait
exactly.
a second.
Yeah. Or they
why is
lock
your card
themselves
working?
out of their electronic account. Their LoRa account for their card.
Right,
That's all.
right.
That's another one too. We
Nice.
get it all the time. We can't do it. We can't reset it or anything.
All right, here's a couple other topics. We can choose from these when we want. How long does cannabis
I would if I could.
intoxication or impairment last? All the new studies do not agree. And finally, from a few weeks ago, teen runs in traffic, grabs dog, attacks person after smoking THC wax. Those are the topics we're gonna get into.
Dangerous wax.
That's from Chief Titterington at Plymouth Township PD. And he knew Boston George quite well. And that was what Justin George told me. He and I talked about that at Cannapalooza 2019.
That was a good time.
Yes, it was.
We haven't mentioned on PGT, but unfortunately, Boston George has passed.
Yes, God bless.
Yep.
God rest his soul, Boston George.
And I also, in addition to that, want to remind everyone of our very dear friend John Schlickler up in is having the Cannapalooza coming up real quick here. So everybody has to be sure to look at that.
Get your campsites ready.
What's the date and time?
I'm trying to find
Campsites.
his
What's going on?
Cannapalooza
Jim.
website on Facebook.
You coming
here.
this year, Jim?
We'll have to see.
You got the camper.
I do.
Cannapalooza Worldwide. And
It's in August. I think it's the week of August 20th.
yeah,
That weekend, August 20th, 21st, 22nd in Standish. I don't know if he's released the actual location yet, but it's in Standish,
TBD.
about fairly close to the expressway, from what I understand. So convenience. And I'm sure it'll be a good time because 2019 was.
Yeah.
Cannapalooza
Yes.
Worldwide.
Worldwide.
And I bet you if you guys all take a little peek on our YouTuber, you can find some little snippets and clippets.
From 2019?
Yep.
Dirty Dan.
Flashback.
Dirty Dan.
And
Dirty Dan was a legend at Cannapalooza 2019.
yeah, and the food competition.
Food competition was outstanding. We won't be doing the Esteban's food competition this year.
Not this year.
No.
No.
Nope, that
We
was a
won't be
one
able
and
to.
done, Jim.
Yeah.
Those fried onions or something?
Difficult
Was it fried onion
to
special or
coordinate.
something? Was there
Fried onions. What, the guy that
No,
won?
the one that the gentleman that won the prize, he had
Was-
like a
oh,
steak
was
and
a
some
fillet?
asparagus or something.
Yeah, it was a gourmet
like
meal.
gourmet.
It was
Did
beautiful.
you compete in that?
No, I was the
He
judge.
was the judge, and they used Esteban's
Conflict
honey,
of interest.
and they got a free gift basket and some swag and stuff like that.
And a
it was-
tracksuit. The winner
Yeah.
got a tracksuit.
Yeah. So
It was
somewhere,
it might be the most fabulous meal.
uh-oh, she's gonna shred some paper. She likes to shred paper.
Where did she get that from? Is that important paper?
I don't know. It looks like
Or she tell me that it's not important?
We have another copy of
What
this.
is
It's that stuff.
Give me that. My tax return?
oh my
My
god.
quarterly estimates? What an asshole dog. Why does he got to remind me of that?
Ow! What a buzzkill.
Anyhow,
Oh my
what were we
gosh.
talking about?
All right, let's introduce everybody. Everybody introduce
Oh
yourself.
my
Over there is
gosh.
who? Who are you and who are they? Jim,
Where's the Bunker
take
Boys?
over.
We got the Bunker Boys. What up, Bunker Boys?
Pink socks.
I just want to apologize to anybody last week that thought we disconnected anybody.
It's
The
Justin's fault.
explanation was simple, and that is it was Justin. So if you have any complaints,
That's all
let
you
us
need
know.
to
We'll
know.
forward them to him.
That's all you need to
But
know.
glad to be here. Looking forward to the show.
Who else we got over there?
Hey everyone, happy to be here. And Justin, we do appreciate you.
Amanda,
And
tell us
guess what?
what?
It's Steve Miller's birthday to remind everyone again.
Happy birthday, Esteban.
Happy birthday! Wasn't that Frosty the Snowman? Every time he came to life at the beginning, he'd say "Happy Birthday."
What's your
I
most
haven't seen
memorable
that in a
birthday,
while.
Steve? What year, what age was your most memorable birthday?
It would have been. I think I just turned 15, and you'll appreciate this. I'd been caddying for a couple of years, so my parents bought me a set of golf clubs for my birthday that year, and I came home and I was pretty excited about that. And my mom is just looking at me with just utter disgust and disappointment. And I'm like, what's going on, Mom? It's my birthday. We're supposed to be happy here. She's like, I got the call. Like, what call are you talking about? You were caught smoking at school today.
Oh,
I'm like, really? Because I didn't, and I don't smoke at school. And
I smoke off campus.
yeah, she didn't know about that. But so my mom called the school and verified, had the principal went down to my class that I was in during the time that I was allegedly caught by Mrs. A, because we had to cross between two buildings. And that's where she caught my buddy. My kid was my neighbor, Tommy. His name was Tommy, too. And so Tommy gave my name and to Mrs. A, and Mrs. A just went full forward with the suspension on that. No due process on that sucker, Michael. But the principal then went and verified my actual whereabouts because I took a test that day. And I was a good kid. I went to class and did my work.
That's what you call an alibi.
So
That alibi.
I will never forget that birthday because of that.
Well, what a birthday bummer.
Yeah, it was. I need to have a really awesome birthday
I thought the
to
story was
override that one.
I thought the story was going to be like you're all excited, you're tears of joy. You got to the first hole, you hit your ball out of bounds. You went to the back, I know, hit the ball out of bounds. You went to go get it, and you started to cry because you realized golf's a hard game, and now I got these clubs. What am I going to do?
After all that, I didn't even want to go play that day. That's how that day went.
I get it.
So that's it. And a good show tonight.
Are you a
I
big
think.
birthday person?
Yeah.
Do you like being the birthday person, or do you like?
I like doing the party for others. I like getting everything all ready, the cake and the balloons and decorations, and I like doing that for other people.
Yeah, some weird phenomena happened that all the people that work at Komorn Law have their birthdays within like 4 days of each
We
other.
do.
Okay, I said the craziest. What are the odds of that happening? Now,
This is
they're all
coming
the
up
same
next.
sign of the moon and sun or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's more than coincidence.
They're all different personality types, which is like defeats all that shit, anyways.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But we all work good together.
All right, the sign
Yin
of the
and yang or
There's
dragon.
a lot of good ebb and flow.
Sign of the dragon.
But the point I was trying to make is that with those statistics going on, he records a lot of turnaround. I mean, at the sacrifice of a law firm. And Steve is fantastic at getting ready for the birthdays.
I like the birthdays.
He is. He's really good at getting the balloons and the cake and the celebration.
He does. He was in his element when
He's
we went
totally in his
for
element.
his son's
Not only that-
graduation party. He was definitely in his element.
Yeah, I
Great
like doing
host.
it.
Yeah. Everybody was having fun. It was
Yeah.
good.
Got to keep things fun, nice, light, no stress.
Yeah.
You got to enjoy doing it.
That's right.
All right, what are the topics that we're not going to talk about?
Well, I think we're going to need to take a quick break, though, because we've got
Okay.
our first guest coming on here shortly.
Yeah.
So we've
Good
got to
time for
make
a
sure
break.
that Justin isn't going to do anything silly.
Wooldridge.
And once we verify that, we'll be right back.
All right.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Hello, this is John D. Lamb from Planet Green Trees TV. Congratulations, Hash Bash, on your 50th annual. This goes out to all your dads out there who ever got in trouble for smoking pot. Your smile is legal now, don't frown. Show some teeth, don't look so down. Hold your head up high, have a ball. You weren't so bad after all. Your smile is illegal now, don't cry. Let me be that twinkle in your eye. You paid the price, took a fall, but you weren't so bad after all. Busted in your high school parking lot, busted in your college dorm. Then you trusted a narc and you got popped on the day your son was born. Misdemeanors, felonies and fines, paranoia, probation times. They watching you pee in the lavatory, a gallon of clean tea. Naturally, you had a record the year you had me. Your smile is legal now, so get high. Might do you some good, give it a try. Your smile is legal, wake and bake. Your smile is legal, have some cake. Happy birthday, Dad, I just had to call. You weren't so bad after all.
Soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight together. My alarm went off and the sun came up, and I was back to work and just my luck. Breaking my back just to stay afloat. I can't stay awake, I need an antidote to keep my fears and my blues away. Well, it's getting heavy at the end of the day. I bust out the door, down the road, yeah, to finish what I started. No we're telling where it might go. Part of a big blue world that was full of fire. I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Seeing my life like it all be real. Wishing that this moment in my life will last forever. And every night I dream so we could be together. And every night I dream so we could be together. Too long, though my feelings now for you are strong. You take my hand, now we leave the ground, we're flying. A big blue world that was full of fire. I was soaring through the air in my radio flyer. That's when I saw you standing in the sunlight. Yeah, the fire in your eyes was so surreal. Somehow I thought it could all be real. Wishing that this moment in my life would last forever. Oh, and every night I dream so we could be together. Oh, and every night I dream so we could be together. Yeah, and every night I dream so we could be together. Yes, I do. Oh, I dream of you. Nuns together. I dream of you. Dream of you. Nuns together.
And now back to more Planet Green Trees.
Using, yeah, with the sun.
We're back.
Does that really work?
No.
All right, we're back.
Back.
Thank you for staying with us. Planet Green Trees episode number 519. If you're listening,
I got a
we
weird
are-
sound.
we are available
yeah, we
on
got a
Facebook,
reverberation.
YouTube, and other platforms. I heard today some things about this. Please like us and or subscribe. If you want to comment, we have people monitoring those. We'll try to talk about that particular subject. And before we're going to break, I asked Steve Miller, military and police officer, trained many years and detective, if he could start a fire.
Yeah.
For some
Can
reason.
you? What if you were
Let me tell you
stuck
why.
out in the wild?
Let me tell you why. Because I did a little soccer practice. We're at the field, and Nathan's now walking around to start the fire.
Rub two sticks together.
So, pulled up some YouTube, and I see the whole process. It's a lot of work.
It is.
You know, to get this thing going. Like,
Yeah.
there's this way or there's this way, and you got to have some stuff. Right? What do you call it? The
Little tinder type
some
of
tinder.
stuff.
But where's that? That's not out there. Even to get it going, right? But the glasses, Steve said, is brilliant, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good
That's
idea.
what I would use. Hopefully I have my glasses
Okay,
on while
okay.
I'm lost.
But
But
tell me
let's
why.
say I
Tell me why,
watch
'cause they-
Naked and Afraid sometimes.
You know what
And
is it? 'Cause is it-
when they get dropped off, they will have their glasses if they wear glasses. So you could use it, but let's pretend that you did not have your glasses. And how would you start?
A fire?
How would you, if you had to live for a long time out there by yourself and you were stuck? How are you going to keep warm?
I can tell you that. I just watched the whole video on it. I know more. I mean, I know that I could do it. As our guest here, okay.
All right.
I bet he can start a fire. We'll find out about
I bet
that.
you he can.
Let's find out. He's living on the road on a bike or something. All right. Without much delay here, and he's timely as well loved by all here. Please welcome our guest for the evening, Howard Wooldridge. Howard Wooldridge is a retired police officer and one of the founders of LEAP.
Daisy.
He's been a guest on Planet Green Trees. I know he listens to it. There was the one podcast he was listening to when he's driving across the country on his bike. We appreciate that. Please welcome Howard Wooldridge.
He's muted.
Oh. Unmute him.
Hit your microphone.
You got to
your little
unmute yourself,
microphone.
Howard.
Tap. Yep. Tap on your screen.
There he is.
Yeah.
Still can't hear him, Justin.
Hold on.
Hold
on
on.
a second, Howard.
Justin is.
He's saying a bunch of really good things right now. I can't hear him. What's that? Is it his or is it?
He's about to say some good stuff.
Yeah.
I think
Oh.
this thing's fucking up back here.
Uh-oh.
These are directors.
No. Bear with us, Howard. We're working on this technicality.
Well,
No
yeah.
problemo.
Oh,
So
we hear you.
There
Oh,
he
we
is.
got him. Okay, perfect. Okay, good.
No problemo. They must do it.
That's it. That's right. All right. So first of all, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate you taking some time. This dog is eating my food off my paper. Tell us first. I was alluding to. I happen to be a bicycle enthusiast. I don't know. I think you're like on 4 or 7 levels above that with this ride that you were on. First of all, what motivated you to do this? Was it were you protesting? Was it for exercise, or as sometimes just to clear your mind? There's no better. First of all, I've got this. Where's my? That's a meme of like. I mean, it's the greatest. You know, bicycle is like the greatest freedom in clearing of one's mind. It should be mandatory for anyone that even wants to think about health. But anyways, tell us about that.
Yeah, the two motivating factors. I re-engaged. You know, I worked in Congress as a lobbyist and advocate, and I re-engaged Congress in Labor Day last year when they started talking about more than just COVID, and they were thinking ahead to 2021. So I put in 6 months, which may not sound like a lot, but when you're a lobbyist, it's a lot of stress, and so I need to take off and clear my head. And then my 70th birthday was coming up, so I wanted to celebrate 70. And I decided if I was going to go across America one more time the hard way, either by bicycle or horse, it had to be this year. And I made the right decision because first couple of weeks, first 1,000 miles was hard on this old 70-year-old body. But eventually, total 8 weeks later, I made it to Ocean City, Maryland, and finished the ride.
Great place, Ocean City.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Where did you start this journey?
A little. I mean, it's a little place near Astoria, Oregon. That's about 100 miles west of Portland.
Okay.
And then came back through Portland, and then Idaho, Utah, Colorado, Kansas, that kind of stuff, all the way to Ocean City.
Wow. So have you done this before on either bicycle or horseback?
Yeah, I rode a horse in 2003 from Georgia to Oregon, and then back across in 2005 from Los Angeles to New York City in a horse. And then 9 years ago, I rode the bicycle from Oregon to Savannah, Georgia.
Wow. And
So
is Oregon
it was my
your
4th trip.
Is Oregon your current domicile state where you live in, or?
No. I live outside of Washington, D.C. and engage in the Congress.
So you just flew out there with your stuff because that's the starting point to come from?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And then head east.
All right. So how many miles was it? So it was. How long did it take you, and how many miles?
3,100 miles. I was making about 65 miles a day with a rest day every 7 to 10 days. And I did 1 century, 100 miles, and I had 1 92-mile day, but I tried to avoid that just because I did not want to overstress myself.
Sure. And I imagine that when you say I did 65 miles a day per average, that could be a ride that's, 6 hours, or it could be 12 hours, depending on the terrain and the incline, right?
Yeah, of course. In Colorado, it was less than 60 with the hills and mountains, a couple of big passes there. And then, of course, rain, and I had snow, sleet, hail, ice. I mean, Kansas was horrible for weather. I mean, it took me 7 days to go across it, and almost every day was just miserable.
Oh.
So you hit literally freezing.
So what are the essential? So let me see. So it was just you and your bike, and your wallet, and a credit card, and you stayed in hotels.
Yep, I had to. I'm too old for camping out. It wasn't going to work.
Well, you don't have to carry as much stuff. Also, although I did see your bike, you had a lot of like travel bags, and were able to. But you lived off of. I mean, it's a different world. Like you could find something if you need it if you pull into town, right? Need it or whatever, and get rid of it. So it's not like you're really without essentials, but you need something on the ride, and you got to load up every day and have water and food, and right. So you're really like, total minimalism, really, right? Because the ride,
correct,
it's got to be.
Yeah, I always carried peanut butter and honey and bread because there's a lot of little towns and villages out there that are dying, and the little cafes that were in almost every little town have often gone away.
Right, and you can always get peanut butter, honey, and bread somewhere, right? It's always like a
correct. And I kept it on my bike.
Right.
I always kept a big loaf of bread. Sure.
Do you eat while you're riding, or do you pull over?
Oh God, no. No. And at my age, I wouldn't even hardly drink when I was riding. I would stop just to drink water, just to be safe.
Right. So so had you been riding at all before you started this the first few miles?
Oh, sure. I was training at about 120 miles a week.
Okay. Are you on Strava?
Yeah, 30 miles at a time.
Are you on Strava or Swift? Do you ever do that? The indoor.
No.
Okay. Never mind.
No. Warm showers, but that's it.
No. There's like they're virtual apps that you can ride with other people online.
I've heard of those. I've heard of those. But no. I just go out in the countryside. I live in the countryside of Maryland. It's pretty and it's adequate.
Do you ride all year round outside too?
No, actually, I'm not a real bicycle person. I'm much more of a horse person, and I only rode the bicycle since January to get in shape for the ride. I'll put the bike. I've already put the bike away, and I may not use it again for a year.
What kind of bike was it? Was it a gravel bike or was it a?
It was a road bike. I'm trying Navara road bike I bought a long time ago.
Any flat tires or anything?
Happy to say none. I barely know how to fix a flat, so 3,100 miles with no flats, I'm a happy camper.
That is insane. Were you constantly checking the pressure, making sure it was the right pressure, or you're not that? Wow.
Yeah, about every 4 or 5 days. They don't vary that much.
Do you carry a pump with you, or do you just use whatever was around?
No, I had a pump. I had a good pump, and of course, repair kits and all. I know how to do it, but I was just very happy. I got some good tires and a special tube, and I was very careful. There's glass, of course, and nails all over the place. And I can tell you, by the way, for politics, that we need new roads. The infrastructure, the roads were horrible. Almost every state, it was just thumpity, thumpity, bumpity, bumpity, bumpity every 10 yards. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Michigan is like that, too. It's
our governor said fix the damn roads, right?
In fact, I just got a bike, and like the bike being bought by most of the bikers these days, these gravel bikes, even though there's not a lot of gravel trails, it's just because the roads are so bad.
Sure.
Road tires, normal road bike tires. So it's the same kind of bike, but just thicker tires,
But if I had it to do over again, I would have bought a like you say, a gravel bike, a mountain bike, and then used road tires on a mountain bike, because you need shock absorbers front and rear because of the condition of the roads. Absolutely.
It's hard on the body. Did you fix yourself on the bike? You were in the right, because you can be in the wrong position. Do you ever get off and fix your bike, like move the seat?
I had it all done before I left. I had the seat in the right position, the handlebars in the right position. Right. So, I was fine there. It wasn't any structural problem or basic problem, but just putting yourself on a bike 6-7 hours a day at my age, I was just happy that my body held up for 8 weeks.
Sure.
Yeah, that's great.
Can you start a fire if you needed to outside? Do you have the capability? Have you done that before if you needed to?
Well, when I've ridden my motorcycle to Alaska and around the country, sure. Yeah, but this time it's all restaurants and cafes and such.
I know. We were just asking. That's a weird technique to have, but if someone needed to do it in survival, could you really do it? Could you really pull it off? Do you have the tech? I'm asking you. You said yes, but
like the rubbing two sticks together technique.
Two sticks together.
Yeah, I carry a lighter, actually. I don't smoke, but I carry a lighter.
That's what I told my son. I go, the way to avoid having to make a fire is to carry a lighter.
That's it.
Yeah, but way easier.
Steve mentioned if he has his glasses, he can use the sun, the glasses, and some dry wood. Is that the real thing?
You'd have to ask a Boy Scout.
Right.
Been too long.
All right, that's fair.
You don't believe me, then?
No, I do. I just want to make sure that if I give it this... All right, so we got a lot to talk about. I know... I don't know if anything's changed. When we last talked to you, you were...
He was pretty optimistic about.
I was going to say cautiously optimistic about one of the bills maybe moving forward. There's a lot of commitment.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's some things that are on the table. We've always talked about like what does a federal legalization look like? What's good? What's bad? Etc. I know there was a states' right bill. There was like the decriminalize, and unschedule. There was another one that was like the make it Schedule 3, I think. And I don't know. So when you left, what was the status of all? I mean, you left when, in July last year? So in the middle of the COVID?
Right. And today, there's a couple bills in Congress regarding marijuana. The most famous is the MORE Act, the MORE Act, which would deschedule. Republicans, Congressman Joyce of Ohio has a straight up 10th Amendment bill, real simple,
I like that
one page. The MORE Act is what all liberals want to have. We call it a Christmas tree here in Congress, where it's not just to end the federal prohibition, it's to take care of a lot of problems which have cropped up in the last 50 years. But it's 87 pages long. It is a deal breaker for Republicans who believe in 10th Amendment. We have the votes, by the way, in both the House and the Senate for a clean, simple 10th or a clean, simple deschedule bill. But when you put 86 pages of liberal Christmas tree stuff, the Republicans will not vote for it. And I don't blame them. I'm a libertarian. I wouldn't vote for it either. These issues of equity and stuff like that, expungement of records, that's best left to the states for better or for worse.
Well, would that be the 10th? Wait, correct. So the 10th Amendment thing is essentially that. It's like, if your state wants to do it, it's your power to do it, and the feds aren't going to mess with you, essentially, right?
Right. And understand, gentlemen, what you already know. There's already a de facto 10th Amendment approach to marijuana. We've got 18 states that are legal, 36, 7, 8 now with medical, and the federal government through 3 presidents, Obama, Trump, and Biden, are not messing with the states. State legal operations have been going full tilt boogie for a long time now. And so there's already de facto 10th Amendment. However, we do need to officially end it so it's a normal traded product with banks, all the rest of the stuff.
Right.
Do you promise that there'll be no federal interdiction for any licensed facilities, assuming they're operating? You feel confident that that's not going to change?
I feel that's not going to change. Biden is probably would want to. He's as bad as Sessions in terms of he loves the drug war. He was a chief cheerleader and supporter of drug wars, mandatory minimums. But always been in favor of that for 40 years. And he's not going to admit that he made a mistake on any of this, but he knows, being a Democrat, if he ever vetoed the bill, he would be crucified. It would cause him to lose the next election. People would be so angry. So he will sign the bill, but he won't be a cheerleader. He won't support it. He won't lobby for it at all.
And he'll continue to fire employees in the White House that admit to marijuana use. Yeah.
It's almost entrapment, right? Because they would have had to admit that, and they could have easily denied it, right?
Right, but why?
Yeah, but then if they polygraph them, I mean, it depends on the procedure. But I think people at that level are polygraphed, and or deep background by FBI. They'll find out if you did a deep background on me and talked to my college roommates, they tell you I smoked marijuana more than once or twice.
Understood. So, it's interesting. What did you, at the time in July, I don't know when it was, I mean, the tenor of the whole process of what legislation was important, not important, was total disarray, right? So I saw, and my concerns were that I don't know, July, August, when they started gathering again, and maybe they were, I don't know, but, like somebody got up and was like, they're debating maybe the MORE Act, and whoever the opponent to it his position was something like, we've got people dying in hospitals, and they want to legalize marijuana? This is fucking crazy.
That was their big running talking point for a bit.
Sure.
It just sounded like a dead end, like you weren't going to get, because whatever.
Well, and indeed, in the summer last year, there was no talk, there was no movement on anything in Congress except COVID-related problems. That's why I've got some friends, I've had them for years on the Hill, legislative directors, chiefs of staff, and they told me in late August, they said, if you want to come back to work, September is a good time because we're now starting to think of 2021 and new legislation. COVID is still very important, but now we will listen to you, make a presentation on drug policy. And in fact, I did switch gears because of all the factors I've mentioned that it's already basically state legal. I've switched gears completely. I'm now pushing hard for a federal bill to go Oregon, which they just made full decrim for small amounts of all drugs. And I think that's the next big thing in drug policy reform. And it is the way to break the back of our drug war. 50 years. By the way, the birthday of the drug war comes up next Thursday. And, to break the back of it, we need to stop arresting 1.4 million people a year for simple possession. And I think we're going to have some success probably later this year or early next year. It'll be a multi-year effort, which most things are in Congress. But it's the right thing to do, and it will absolutely improve America as we stop harassing people on car searches, up against the wall, stop and frisk, as cops spend so much time going after somebody with a gram of cocaine or whatever.
Right.
I want to, we're going to take a break. If you can stay with us, Howard, I want to ask some more questions on the other side about the concept of legalization of all drugs, or decriminalizing, and I also want to ask you about some of these issues you mentioned about the war on drugs. But let's, if you will, stay with us. We're going to take a quick break and listen to Planet Green Trees, episode number 519. No, Steve, there are no printer gods. We'll be right back.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
I've been driving in circles all day.
Hi, I'm attorney Michael Komorn of Komorn Law PLC, and you are watching Planet Green Trees.
Everybody screaming back at home, wanna know which we get before we because with the back of a taxi cab with a party bag, bad full of pocket brats, ready to my ass to the shit now. Back there, what's up, 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 we go now.
Now back to more Planet Green Trees.
All right, we're back. This is Planet Green Trees, episode number 517.
19.
What is it? 18?
19.
Okay,
19.
All right, very good. So we're joined tonight by Howard Wooldridge, who is telling us about his ride across America on his bicycle.
Which is
Very
super
exciting
cool.
story.
Very cool.
And although I really want to continue talking about that, there's a lot of other topics that we began to talk about that I want to continue with, such as, you know, I know as a lobbyist you're trying to achieve something, and I think the goal, obviously, is to get some kind of federal action acknowledging anything other than its current state. And I don't know what what trajectory you're shooting for and what realistic, outcomes, even, before you left, because I know you had some optimism or whatever. And, I know the different options create different reactions, I guess. Like the rescheduling or, to 2 or 3. There's all kinds of issues that come with that, right? You got to worry about the pharmaceutical companies coming in and, monopolizing it. It's also a concern, I think, that if they, did a complete state leak, unscheduled it at the federal level or just said is legal now, then the industry itself, has got the likelihood it's going to be taken over by traditional commercial banking and whatnot, interstate commerce. That may be the best thing for it. That's the way you really reduce the gray market or whatnot. But you still have, because I do think that sometimes this idea of tax and regulate is just code word for more prohibition in a way. You know what I mean? Like, is that really what's it?
Got it?
Nah.
Well, the problem, I know we can disagree, and that's fine. Let me try to make my point. I didn't mean to get hung up on this, but I feel like people have been growing marijuana long before it was medical, long before it became legal in states, right? And some of those people did it illegally. And now there's all these other options of ways for people to get their marijuana. And it's from completely different sources that have been created by the government. It doesn't really address a lot of these other persons that are cannabis growers, and they're saying you want to be in the commercial market, you got to go to these licensed people. The number of licensed people, like in California, Michigan's having the same kind of issue where there isn't a free organic market. It's a super controlled market. Super controlled in the sense that the cities and municipalities are still controlling what cities are going to opt in for licensing. Michigan's the same thing. There's like 5-8% of the entire state is opted in. So when a city opts out and says, we're not going to be one of these cities where that behavior that more than 50% of the people in the state of Michigan voted for, that business isn't happening here, it doesn't mean somebody's not going to get their cannabis. They're just going to go get it from, some unregulated place, theoretically. And we have that going on. So that the tax and regulate is a club in a way. You got to join our club and not everyone's allowed in our club. Now, a freer market, I think, in that regard, would exponentially, speed up the process that we want to get to. And I want to hear what you have to say, but I use the example of CBD product where there's virtually no regulations whatsoever. You can get it anywhere. Anyone that wants to participate can participate in it. And there's no gray market anymore. And you can get it anywhere. You know what I mean? The cost is reasonable. You know what I mean? So give me your thoughts on that, just because I know that's what we're left with, tax and regulate, and I just want to hear.
Well, let's hopefully agree that what's going on in Michigan today, 2.5 years into rec and 10 years into medical, is way better than it was at the turn of the century when everything was illegal. Certainly, and it's as you know, it's evolving. There are fewer and fewer regulations at the state level, but it's a state level operation. The voters have to be comfortable with it. But let's back up, like with CBD. You guys probably understand the fact that all drugs are categorized, except for 2 at this point. The GRAS rules, you're familiar, generally recognized as safe, like aspirin, ibuprofen, and now CBD is basically a GRAS-controlled substance. It's generally recognized as safe. There's no controls. A 5-year-old can go buy CBD, as far as I know. And then you have all your Schedule 1 through 5, and then you have 2 drugs, alcohol and tobacco, which are descheduled. They are unscheduled. And what I would like to see at the federal level to expedite the harm done by the war on drugs and the war on marijuana is to deschedule it, treat it just like alcohol and tobacco, which makes it a total 10th Amendment states' rights issue. And then Michigan can do whatever it feels best. Now, inside Michigan, if they are going to say states can opt in or opt out, that's totally their right. There are many counties in this country that have opted out of sales of alcohol. You know that. You go to Kentucky, I couldn't buy beer on Sunday in Missouri. I like my beer. And Sunday sales are illegal. So, shucks. But I believe in local control is always best. And yes, there's going to be a gray market anytime you have that. But the gray market is shrinking and shrinking as more people, as more states allow it. And of course, you know that the Mexican cartels have lost about 20 B-boy billion in gross sales, because now almost all, my understanding, you tell me different, almost all marijuana sales in USA come from USA-produced weed.
Sure. Michigan, for example, is surrounded by Indiana and Wisconsin at some points, which I think neither is legal or medical. Indiana is not medical.
Indiana, you don't want to go.
Right.
No.
Anyway, so but I just think that, like, there's we have a trend going on right now, which I think is a position that the police have taken, and has brought some of the Michigan's caregiver community into jeopardy, because you have this regulated market where there's inspections and you got to get a license and building code approvals and pass all these facility inspections. And then you have the caregivers, which is the original program, the 12 plants per patient, not more than 5 per patient, 5 patients growing in your basement, virtually no transparency, no inspections, government doesn't know what's going on. And in the industry, it's weird because, we were talking last week that the cannabis community in Michigan was able to defend the MMA in Michigan for a long time. We fought off the legislative amendments, the police were brutal to it. We made it a long way. And now that we have this new regulated program, who's the most critical of the MMA and the caregivers? The people within the industry, because they see them as a threat. There's no taxing for caregivers. There's no oversight for them. And the last grab from the industry itself has been to try to get control over the CBD products that they regulated through the state system, and the THC, Delta 8, Delta 10, which is the other. But
right.
So anyways, listen, I agree with your thought that much better off than 12 years ago or at the turn of the century, 100%. And but it doesn't, it's interesting because all the things that are probably in the MORE Act that are going to that never make the MORE Act pass, those are realistic things. Like there's communities that have been devastated. There's people's records that have been destroyed. They can't get work. Michigan, in fact, went from the worst to one of the most progressive in terms of expungement law, where they've got the one bad night rule. In the old days you got to fine, we'll dismiss one count, but he's got to plead to 2 so he can't get it expunged later on. We want to be a felon his whole life. Now they got this one bad night rule, so 10 years later you can still get 2 felonies. They're rising out of the same incident, and a lot of other proactive things that are saying we're not going to torture people for the rest of their lives with felony convictions. So there's, but it's still not enough. We still have a lot of people with marijuana convictions. Illinois did something. They just wiped clean 26,000, record convictions at some point, and, signing mass, expungements. But it's better. But we're going to go, we're in a very interesting and critical time right now, because and you got to understand the mantra. The mantra is, it's easy to say, tax and regulate. The whole caregiver system, which is, it's getting a bad rap. I defend the MMA. I think it's important. There's patients that need excessive amounts of cannabis, RSO oil, can't afford it. You got to have these other outlets. The statistic we heard is there's 77,000 was that right? No, 77,000 patients that use caregivers. The rest of the 250,000, don't have a caregiver. Nevertheless, they're like a dying breed. They're trying to run them out, and the criticism has always been that, people are just getting their 5 patients, and growing and selling it into Indiana, into Wisconsin. So we got to shut it down, and you see what I'm saying? So, but why is there a market for that? That doesn't, you don't raid those people because of that. You don't throw them in jail. That's not the right thing. But that's the solution here. And the problem is that it's illegal in these other states, and there's a demand for it over there. So how do we fix that?
Well, certainly this all starts with your local county commission or your mayor. They can simply tell the police what Barack Obama said back in 2013: don't waste your time on marijuana. And the city council could do that. I just talked to my chief up in where I used to work near Lansing, and he says for him, since legalization, they've gone to close to 0.0 on anything marijuana. They said, so they catch a guy with 2 ounces in the car versus, you guys have 1 ounce or 2 ounce? I forget.
2.5.
Yeah, 2.5. They'll find somebody with 3 or 4 ounces, and they'll go, geez, they either throw it away a little bit or just let the guy go like he's doing 5 over. So marijuana has gone to a 0.0 problem, if you will, for my old police department. And I talked to the sheriff of Saginaw County, Bill.
We like him.
He said the same thing. It's a nothing burger. The whole legalization is a nothing burger. And understand this is all a progression. And for those industry guys, and they are fighting anything where they're not selling and producing and selling the marijuana. When this thing is legalized at the federal level, you guys probably know that we're going to import from Colombia, Panama, wherever, and it's going to run the entire industry into the ground, except for some boutique type things like they have for wineries, because the good weed coming out of Colombia or whatever is going to be priced way below what an American producer can make. This is going to be straightforward trade, and the industry is going to be devastated.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned and got into that area, because I do think that there are some actions that the federal government can. I don't think they're thinking about this at all, but that they can actually steps that they can take that will leave the economy and the market as it is instead of devastating. That would be a simple States' Rights Act, 10th Amendment. Let the states do it. It doesn't even open up interstate commerce to a certain degree. It doesn't authorize that. So you still have your own little island, state to state, and they can kind of control and let that go. And I like that, because then you've at least got it's a more middle class opportunity. You know what I mean? That doesn't exist before. And the second you make it, like you said, legal everywhere, interstate, intrastate, it's not just the Colombian and all the importing. I don't know if you saw the meme the other day. Obviously Amazon's no longer firing people for testing dirty, and they support federal legalization. That ends the entire industry or whatever. If you're feeling like reckless and you want to buy something on the internet, you go to Amazon and it'll be in your door in 24 hours. They're going to own the industry of cannabis. Like, they'll be getting that to you, and, it'll be over. Like, there'll be no competition. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. But
it's going to happen in our lifetime. And that's just but until then, of course, the industry wants to keep their profits up. And so here we are.
Isn't there an option?
It's getting better everywhere.
Isn't there an option, though, that the states think about it from the states operated licensed people now. If all of a sudden you got to get a federal license and the state one doesn't matter anymore, they would have to deal with all of that. They really need to keep their hands out of it, And not every state would 10th Amendment in, right? Some states have to be forced to do things sometimes, or they resist because it's the right to do that. Every state's not going to opt in right now.
Correct. Mississippi historically, Mississippi was the last state to allow the possession and sale of alcohol in 1966. 33 years after the passage of the 21st Amendment, you still had a state where alcohol was illegal to possess or sell or make. So this will be the same. Mississippi may be the last state in Star Trek times to go legal marijuana, but I still think that's the best system to go, because now the states that want it can have it, and if it's that damn important, move.
Right. I want to clarify this. What is your prediction of this last state that will take some steps?
Mississippi, as good as any. But then again, I've talked to people in Oklahoma, the second last state to go legal alcohol, and they believe they're going to legalize marijuana next year with an initiative referendum. They're confident, and from what I know, they will succeed.
They have it.
Medical?
Oklahoma is where he said.
You're saying Oklahoma? One of the southern states has a very, like the tomato. I thought it was Oklahoma. Is that the medical?
Oklahoma, you can get a license for $2,500.
Yeah.
And grow out of your house.
And if you pass testing, right? Oklahoma has some. They have a much more less restrictive entrance into the market.
Right.
But,
at this point, Tennessee's going to be the worst state for marijuana, from what I read.
What about Indiana? Is that not?
Indiana, Tennessee, about the same thing. Okay. They're both they're going to take forever to legalize anything.
Interesting. Let's talk about this other topic here of the legalization or decriminalization of other drugs. You know, and just the this sometimes divides the community that is on their edge of their seat listening to the retired police officer talk about cannabis reform. And then they jumps over into like, cop says legalize cocaine and heroin. They're like, wait a second here, I just like cannabis, But there's a bigger story here because prohibition doesn't work, and this has been exhibited since we're coming up. What 50th anniversary?
Well, of the drug war, it's been 107 years since we made cocaine and heroin illegal.
What's the date of birth of the drug war on your clock? What are you using as a reference? The Nixon?
June 17th, 1971.
Nixon's Controlled Substances Act? Okay.
Well, his speech about we need to have a war on drugs to make America a better place.
Right. A lot of people don't know the history of this fact that even before that, I think there was state laws that allowed for the arresting of individuals because they were a drug addict.
Okay.
Well, the reason why I knew this is because we're trying to figure out when the United States Supreme Court finally ruled on the Eighth Amendment cruel and unusual punishment for forfeiture. There's that Tim's case. It's a great ruling. It's got to be proportionate instead of them just the other cases in the history of like when there's governments being cruel and unusual and its punishment is when they're prosecuting people for being drug addicts. So some cases that kind of resonate as the source for where they came to of the Eighth Amendment, cruel and unusual punishments, like you're punishing someone that's sick. Anyways, I'm laying it out there. So it existed in some part. In fact, it was in California. These cases came out of California where they were. But nevertheless, all right. So let's go back to the prohibition doesn't work. And the possession of drugs opens the police, the training and the policing. Policing is about getting those things and finding those things. It takes them out of, from the police perspective, it takes them out of doing real crime prevention or activity, and also puts them at risk and the people at risk. What else, Howard? What's other reasons why we want to get rid of why we want to decriminalize all drugs?
Well, first is to make does not get rid of the drug dealer nor the drug smuggling and that the trafficking in drugs in general. It just simply says the individual will not be punished more than, say, $100 fine like it is in Oregon today, civil infraction like a parking ticket for simple possession of any drug. The advantages are, two, in that, one, you don't ruin a person's life, as we've discussed already with the, check the box, that kind of stuff. And secondly, almost as or more importantly, you will have a dramatic reduction in car searches and stop and frisk searches across USA when police officers who get a kick out of arresting somebody for simple possession will no longer be able to do it. My street experience says those lousy POS police officers will eventually stop searching car after car because all they can do is write the guy a ticket, like a parking ticket, and there's no joy for those kinds of cops to go to all that work to find the drugs and then just issue the guy a ticket. They want to put the handcuffs on that black or brown person. They want to ruin their life, and this is going to stop them from doing it. We already know this is going to happen because you may have seen the stats out of Colorado. State police did a good report. Searches of black drivers since legalization of marijuana down over 50%. So, because and that was dropping in 2018 when they published the report, and I'm sure it's better today. And so this is irritating fewer black and brown drivers. It's going to improve police community relations. And I'm using this as a big selling point in Congress to say we need to improve in the year of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the rest. We need to get the public feeling better about the cops. And one way is to have less contact / less friction. So that's why I heavily promote that as a way to improve the lives of our black and brown brothers and sisters by stop having the police harass them and search after search after search. I work with racist officers in Bath Township, Michigan, and it was disgusting. But at the time, the chief was right there with them and had no problem with it. But once they can't put handcuffs on black and brown people, I'm highly confident they'll stop searching the car in the first place.
I think he's right.
I got to tell you, that stat that you just threw out there from Colorado reminded me. It's almost like you got the Nixon speech and the creation of the war on drugs, the biggest lie, the real biggest lie I've ever told. And as I argue, it's the cause and root of our division that we're living in right now. It is really part of that.
Part of it.
The silent majority, quote unquote, and everybody else. And then, of course, reading that statistic from Colorado, an experiment, the Petri dish of let them do it. The states have a right to do it. Now they're legalization. Mm-hmm. And it turns out at a time when there's, really for the first time in history, a spotlight on police interactions with brown and black people, and the I was reminded of, and I want to find the exact quote. And it's Ehrlichman, who was Nixon's,
mm-hmm.
chief of staff, that said something like, years later in like Harper Magazine, he says like, well, you got to understand, in the 1970 campaign, Nixon had these enemies. It was the war protesters, civil rights advocates, the Jewish psychiatrists. We couldn't just lock them up because they're our opponents. But we knew if we made these drugs illegal, we could vilify them every night by breaking up their meetings and dragging them in front of the newspapers every night. Do we know the drugs weren't dangerous? Sure we did. In other words, it was a racist policy. And now we see, when you legalize it, what happens? All this bad shit that's been brought to these communities that it's been their fault. You know what I mean? Like the police are, doing the, and none of this has an impact, and imagery and all the, optics of this, of how this thing goes on, and you go, bam, you legalize marijuana. Look what happens. I mean, it's like the frosting or the frosting on the pile of shit cake. You know what I mean? I guess, if there's a way to describe it, but. That's a fascinating point. All right, so I want to pin you down on this one because I was asking about it before and I think it's an interesting topic. You're right. If we were going to legalize all these other drugs, it doesn't stop the drug dealer. It doesn't stop the, importers and cartels and whatnot. It stops the interactions with the humans. But it does beg the question: how are we going to deal with that? Because if you're legalizing the drug, then there's more of a demand for it. You got people that can use it and get it.
No,
so you're gonna. We gotta. Go ahead.
Stop right there. In terms of, okay, you switch from decrim to legalization. Legalization gets rid of all the cartels. It eliminates approximately 1 million jobs in America today selling drugs off sidewalks, and because there are no Al Capones left in USA, and there will be no Chapo Guzmans or whatever else, El Chapo selling drugs off sidewalks either, no, because everybody will buy them from a store. Even if you're 18 years old and you want cocaine, you'll get it from an older brother or sister, the same way I bought beer from my older brother when I was 16 and wanted to get drunk in Panama City, Florida. So that goes away. All that dealing and smuggling goes away in a legal regulated market. And we should keep in mind, which is something nobody wants to hear across USA, Democrat or Republican, the analysis of my organization shows that 10 teenagers are shot every day across America selling these drugs. And this is a this is horrible, and nobody wants to talk about it. But the government's done studies on this. There's almost 1 million teenagers selling drugs. Of that million, every day 10 are shot. So this is our own atrocity, if you will, to pick a word, and it goes away with legalize, regulate. And last, when you said, drug use will go up, I've talked to 8 doctors, board certified in addiction psychology, who had no dog in the fight. All of them said almost nobody is going to pick up crack, meth, and heroin if you legalize it tomorrow, because they're not that stupid.
I got it. I didn't mean to say that. You are right about that, and I was not as clear in what I was trying to say. There's a demand now.
Correct.
And that demand is a huge market. That's why you have these cartels fighting for the business.
Right.
And there's so many people that have been in jail, or, been locked up. So if there's a decrim, there is, I don't know if the current existing market and incentive to get, illegal, illicit drugs into the hands of the people that would take them. Nobody knew, but now that it's, allowed or decriminalized, and there's still the same need for it. It doesn't mean there's more of it, but there's still like a need for it. So it doesn't solve that problem. So if you were going to take the next steps to try to solve that problem and let the states regulate it, let's say, what does that look like? Are you talking? Is it going to be a pharmacy? Is it going to be private businesses? Do you think you want doctors involved?
Yeah, we had no doctors. This would be the same thing as alcohol and cigarettes, the 2 deadliest drugs. You don't need a prescription. You don't need to go to the pharmacy. You don't need to go see a doctor. It should be the exact same thing, or you'll have a real prohibition on those things where people won't go to a doctor, and the pharmacies don't want to sell it. But you'd have to call together some people smarter than me to say, what exactly would you do? But essentially, there's a number of states that have liquor stores, where the state has like Virginia, has a system where the state owns the hard liquor stores, and their state employees, et cetera. I would start with that just because it would make the people feel better about changing radically the system. I've been in a marijuana store in Colorado. There's a guy that checks your ID at the door. If you're not 21, you can't come in. And let's have that kind of a system, no outside advertising. But if you want to buy, and in the beginning, you would have to have a limit of, say, a 1 week supply or 2 week supply, because you're going to have cross-border smuggling. If Virginia was the only state to have legal cocaine, everybody would go to Virginia to buy cocaine. So you'd have to have a limit and a control on how often and how much you could buy. But at the end of the day, you're going to start the process where we end this horrifically bad policy of prohibition, and almost more importantly, return my profession to its true purpose, which is public safety, not your personal safety.
Amen.
And this is going to make, you're going to cut the prisons in half, gentlemen. Half.
Good.
And think of all the money for a junior college when you can close Ionia and Jackson and only have a few left over in Michigan for the real serious bad guys who rob and rape and steal.
That's it.
It's going to be a huge difference. We've had 50 years of building up this prison system and everything else, and people can't even hardly remember when we only put 400,000 people in jail, because now it's 2.3 million.
Yeah, it's insane, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the police are going to fight it. You know that. The prosecutors are going to fight it. The prison guards fight it. And the surprising one there, if you don't know, in Oregon, they came out openly. The drug treatment industry fought Oregon decrim tooth and nail, because what's been going on for 50 years is my profession arrests 1.4 million people for simple possession. And you see the judge, he says, you want to do 6 months in jail for your cocaine or 6 months in outpatient treatment through a drug court? And when you say yes, then you go to a private company to get that drug court treatment, and it's several thousands of dollars a month. Their business model depends on my profession bringing in a potential 1.4 million customers. So they fought Oregon tooth and nail, but despite that, the good people there voted 58-42 to say we're going to try the experiment of decrim and see how it works out. And so far, 5 months later, there's a thundering silence out of Oregon. No problemos. Thank you very much.
Good. And that's, and these drug treatment people, they really got a lot to say for somebody who's only got a 5% success rate when it comes to healing people. And
Correct.
these courts and everybody else in the system tout them as experts. And if I went and took a college course and got 5% on every assignment and test I took in there, they would send me on my way and tell me, please don't come back, sir.
Correct. You're well versed, and I appreciate that. Yeah, the doctors I've talked to on this issue, coerced, forced treatment is rarely successful. Like you say, it's about a 5% success rate. You know about Portugal? Oregon modeled their legislation on Portugal, and in Portugal, neither in Portugal nor Oregon is it obligatory to go to treatment. You don't have to. They'll recommend it if you need it, but there you go.
Yeah, you can't force treatment. Person's got to figure it out.
You can't force treatment. Nope. And that's the same as when we stop somebody for a minor in possession for alcohol, or you have an open beer in your car, whatever, and you're 30 years old. When you pay the ticket, you don't have to be forced into treatment or an education course or a drug court because you were caught with beer in your car. It should be the same principle here. And Oregon took the bold step, and I think you're going to see more states do it. And I hope your listeners will contact the governor, Whitmer, and your state senators and state reps and say, Michigan needs to do this tomorrow because you're spending billions Michigan's about $2 billion on your prison system. It's either $1 or $2 billion. A lot of that money could go to fixing your roads, etc.
There was a lot of hype about how marijuana program was going to be implemented, and I don't know that our leadership has stepped forward. And I say that because you're saying the right things, and I think it's a safe place for the leaders to say tax and regulate and draw a little circle and get in it, or it's us and them kind of thing. But I don't want to digress. Let me ask you this. I mean, we're talking about the business of 1.4 million customers a year. This last couple of years has been really there's been a huge spotlight put on the police community, more so than ever, I think. And I don't know that anyone can point to a specific change anywhere. I mean, I think that's a good discussion to have, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. But I wanted to ask you about this article that was from the other day. It's this Arkansas State police officer who flipped over a pregnant woman's vehicle using a maneuver designed to end car crashes has not faced any disciplinary measures for his actions. This Nicole Harper's car was flipped over and has been made public because she's suing him. She alleges that Dunn negligently performed the pursuit intervention technique, the PIT technique, which Steve explained to us is like when, So it's an interesting dynamic because that we're even talking about this, because the general idea when someone's got a driver's license, it's implied, there's an implied consent law that if the police try to pull you over, you got to pull over, got to have your driver's license, proof of insurance, and registration of the vehicle. Nothing other than that. Those are required, right? And but the one thing that I don't know that I mean, you got to pull over a safe place. Safe place that's for the driver, and I don't know if you think about. Most people are thinking about. Well, I wanted to pull up here because if I pulled over here, you police officer couldn't. There wouldn't be any room for you. You know what I mean? But not stopping. That's a thoughtful thing that may not get very far on observation. And the point that I wanted to bring her is this woman, she said she drove out a little further than she wanted to because there wasn't a safe place to pull over, And I'm thinking like in the world that we're living around with all this, whether it is heightened concerns and media reporting of how bad the police officers are and all these, however people are going to interpret that, they may want to drive on a little bit more to a more, place where there may be a witness or something. Like this is kind of implanted in the eyes and minds of people.
Yes.
And that may be the most innocent, genteel, thought, but to a trained police officer, they're fleeing. I mean, in some capacity. I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, and I wasn't there, but I pulled over 20,000 cars in my day, and it was a semi-rural, suburb of Lansing, and it happened from time to time. Somebody would drive an extra quarter mile, half mile, to a populated area, or like you say, a safe place without a hill to pull over. And God bless. The difference is, and if the details come out in that stop in Arkansas, is did she slow down? Did she put her four ways on to indicate to the officer that, yes, I know you're there, and my four ways means I know I need to stop. And then if you keep driving, for whatever reason, it's a hill, it's a curve, or you want to get someplace where there's other people, then that officer has an obligation to just follow you.
I agree.
Until the motorist reaches an area. But you've got badly trained and badly managed police officers who take like you said, they must be fleeing because they're not stopping. That's not true. And to do that, in my world, that's attempt murder.
What do you think about this?
With a 3,000-pound car, you can kill somebody.
She was there was a debate on the internet about this that what she did also, in addition to, she put on her hazards, which is supposed to be an indication to the police officer that you're
just like Howard said. Yeah.
Did you say that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So
then if she put her four ways on, if that's on the dash camera or whatever, then that officer should be charged with a felony of assault with a deadly weapon. Absolutely.
I agree.
Not even close.
Well, think about I agree, and that's one particular officer. Now, he hasn't been released yet. There's probably an
hasn't been disciplined.
There's an internal investigation. It's probably good. I don't know. I'm not going to defend him. I'm not going to try to prosecute him. I wasn't there, but I'm reminded of this. We've got what's my there's a guy that teaches the. He did he's a former police officer, did a ton of drunk driving cases. Lance Platt? Do you know Lance Platt? Lance Platt.
No.
He does a lot of expert work in the DRE and drunk driving cases, whatever.
Oh yeah.
We got our field sobriety FST certification. I did like a 2-day class with him, and he was describing. You have to remember that a police traffic stop is the most abnormal thing that could take place. Even though the officer's trained, he has no idea what he's getting into, and it's never automatically comfortable because they really don't know. Now, I know there's a certain amount of training and, observation that you can cue it, but they really don't know, and it's always in the back of their mind no matter how cool they're trying to be. From the driver's perspective, most people, it's not a common occurrence. They're already nervous from the get-go. You know what I mean? Even if they're innocent of nothing. Do you know what I mean? So the combination of those two things is just a plethora of energy that's designed to go sideways. You know what I mean? It's building. Now, it doesn't have to. And if most people are, mindful or they think about it, but most people don't start their day like, what happens if I get pulled over today? Or even think about that in that regard. You know what I mean?
Well, it helps to be white, but go ahead. Well,
you're right. And everyone's looking at that situation differently, right? That whole experience is completely different. And so what I'm saying is, if we remove the war on drugs from the policing that police do and get them back to protecting the community, how far does that go into these traffic stops? You know what I mean? She was speeding. Like, is there ever a time that the idea that someone was speeding, traffic violation, and we result in a car being flipped over? You know what I mean? The reason why that kind of thing could happen is because he's not protecting the roads for driving. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, forget the search warrants as a way to get into people's shit. Traffic. There's no Fourth Amendment on the road. Essentially, I mean, you keep them too long. But even now a reasonable mistake. The officer doesn't even have to really know the law. I pulled you over because I thought the law was this. Oh, it's a reasonable mistake. All the marijuana you smelled. Get out. But I'm just saying. So there's is that ever a thing that's going to change in policing in this discussion?
It has already. Fayetteville, North Carolina, has cut their traffic stops by 75%. They've got some program now. They're getting closer to Europe. That when you see a simple violation, expired plate, expired driver's license for the registered owner, simple speed, simple red light, simple stuff, not drunk driving and reckless, but simple stuff. You just send the registered owner a ticket in the mail and say, if you weren't driving on on Thursday at 8 o'clock in the evening on such and such a street, we'll need the name and driver's license information of the person who was to give them the ticket and the points and the fines and costs. Europe, if you're familiar, they never pull traffic stops. I mean, essentially never, except for drunk driving. They do cameras, and you just get it in the mail. The registered owner gets the ticket in the mail. We need to move faster and faster to that. Understand, back to the original point here, the drug war has been the incentive to stop cars on a pretext, whether it's doing 5 over or you were weaving or whatever. And then when the driver's nervous, as you indicated, all of them are, they were nervous, so therefore they must be hiding drugs, therefore get out of the car. And then they find the $700 in your glove box, and they say, what's this about? And you say, I'm going to buy a bicycle off from eBay. Here's my contract. The officer takes the money and says, I think you're going to buy drugs. Yeah. And then a year later or so, you get to go to district court and try to get your $700 back. This is a way that the police brought in $5.3 billion in 2019 on the civil asset forfeiture. You make these quote-unquote pretext stops or simple traffic stops in order to justify a search, and then you find innocent citizens with money. And if you see me getting angry, I am.
That's what I've been telling people all along.
On my profession.
Can we be honest? California's crafted these laws, which is like possessing money intended to purchase non-regulated marijuana. But it's like a 2-year felony in California.
Okay.
I'm telling you, like California's got because you know what it's unfortunate. It's like the war on drugs and the statistics of Colorado, like putting the seal on this, what we've known for 50 years. The civil asset forfeiture was obviously abused to get to the point where this change and revolution in thinking has taken place. But we only got there because of the mismanagement of government. It got too big, too many. They couldn't figure out ways to bring in money. Then the economy goes sour and all the jobs are going overseas and people aren't sticking around. They don't have a tax base locally. That is the way cities and municipalities are supposed to raise revenue. It's not supposed to be from going out and arresting people, taking them down to the castle and making them pay silver shillings to the king, because that's what it's like. You know what I mean? They got the medieval, So and they're supporting. And Michigan's produced 2 really interesting reports. One was the trial court funding report, which concluded that the Michigan court system is broken. I've been saying this for 28 years as a lawyer. What they said was, if you take away the circuit court, the district courts, removing all the other courts, one court of justice in Michigan, they're considered one court. They are independently funded, though. It's not one court of funding. It's one court of justice, independent funding. But the district court budget is made up of 80% of the budget is made up of funds from citizens that appear before them. And you probably know Thomas Boyd was one of the judges who was retired. Now he's the court administrator. He said, if that's not actual bias, it's the appearance of bias, because who would think that they could get a fair shake if the judge is worried about paying the bills of the...
Paying the bills.
Yeah.
Sure.
But anyways, so the forfeiture still exists. The courts have been a way for them to bring in money, and it's a problem. But you got to look at the source of the problem, which is that we have too much government, and no one's really looking at that as a source. Let's go back to the traffic stops and the policing and whatnot. That's a fascinating program. I never thought about Europe. You're right.
I've never thought about that either.
I mean, in a way, I kind of started to think about, now there's, Orwell's 1984. The government's on every, cameras on every corner. They're already reading your emails and tracking you, But it does reduce a lot of interactions. It's kind of a trade-off to some degree, but there's got to be some checks and balances on that, right? You need some independent. The concern that I would have with something like that, if we allow without some kind of oversight, is we got these Stingray programs, Stingray machines, where they're false. They're sourcing. They're creating probable cause without identifying the source. by using these stingers. But anyways, what are your thoughts on that, Howard? Do you think that's too much deference, or do you think the payoff is just less work?
No, your point is well taken. I mean, we've got like you say, those stingrays and other devices that we could just look at. The machine automatically looks at every plate as the officer's driving by or you're driving by, and it then gets the driver information, etc., and then it is stored. So you were driving by the 7-Eleven at Bruce and Spruce on such a date and time. How long can the police hold on to that information to see if you robbed the bank 10 minutes ago or 10 hours ago or 10 days ago? It's a bit, and that's way above my pay grade, guys, but we certainly need to talk about it. I don't know what the right answer is. I would want law enforcement input. I would want ACLU input, and let's come to a sensible compromise so we can solve more crimes, as we see on TV with these cameras at every intersection or toll roads or whatever. The easy pass lanes, the country, easy pass lanes are everywhere. And but that's a great question. The answer, but at the end of the day, we have to balance it, and that's above my pay grade. I'm not that smart.
On the issue of reform, I don't know if there's been anything, yet that can be pointed to that's been a result of all the protests and some of the terrible events that have taken place. Mm-hmm. And videotaped and a very important issue in our country right now that we have to address. I don't know if we can point to any absolute solution. I mean, your example of the locality that's sending out tickets, that's a huge step. But at the federal level or at the state level, the conversation is around defund the police. This Europe camera thing has. I mean, you're not saying defund the police, but I wonder how many police officers wouldn't be needed after this. You don't need as much traffic patrol. You may need a third of the, that's just an interesting phenomena. But, in terms of, because the issues that we're dealing with, Howard, are, is it so institutionalized, the policing, that something really dramatic has to happen, or will it be able to adjust with, some minor baby steps or just any kind of reform? And I think the other so I'm not I want to hear your thoughts on defund. Obviously we like this camera program, but what does that do for the economy of policing? And maybe that's something we should be concerned about. Or what about addressing the qualified immunity issue? And let me make my point for that. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's get, so I can't hold too many things in my head. Like the whole thing of defund the police, we've got about 725,000 police officers in this country, and we would need less if we didn't have the war on drugs. As a detective for 3 years, a solid 70% of my felony caseload touched crimes associated with prohibition of drugs, mostly property crimes. Home burglaries, 80% of the people I arrested for breaking into your house were addicted to crack at the time, the 90s, and they needed $200 a day, and they kept breaking into one home a day until I caught them. So that kind of stuff is that's why I say you're going to close half the prisons in Michigan when you legalize all drugs, because legal cocaine will cost the consumer $2 a day if you don't tax it. So you can... But the term defund the police is horrible for politics, but you certainly can reduce the budgets. The same way we had a reduction in force at the end of the Soviet Union. You guys will remember that. We cut the military by 1/3, almost by half, I think. Yeah, by half, down to 1.6 million. And we could do the same thing with the police when we end this war on drugs, because then you're going to cut your prison guard numbers in half. You can cut probably a good 25% of the police officers out there. And if you go to a more progressive traffic enforcement like the Europeans do, you can cut another bunch of folks, because you just don't make all these nickel and dime stops for somebody doing 15, 18 over or running a red light. Just send them a ticket through the mail, or the officer on the street gets the plate number of the guy who just ran the red light, and then they send it through the mail that way, whichever is best. Again, this has to be discussed by a lot of smart people. I'm not sure I'm qualified.
But Howard, a lot of the police managers I've noticed nowadays, or at least around here, that have the rank of lieutenant and above.
Yeah.
A lot of them come from, they were in the narcotics units. And they still believe in this war on drugs, and they're going to say, you know, Howard, you're crazy. How are we going to get into cars if we go with this route of travel?
Absolutely. The police
that's what you got right now. Is police managers are narcotics lovers.
Yeah.
Of the
you're
enforcement.
totally right. My profession is out of control. It likes the money. It likes the fun, if you will, of hitting a house and a drug raid or searching a car of somebody they don't like black and brown. My profession fights me every day, tooth and nail, in Congress on Capitol Hill, because I want to take away $84 billion that they make every year.
Amen.
In the war on drugs. So yeah, they're going to fight it, but it's up to citizens like Oregon to say, I don't care what the police want. We should have. You guys have an initiative referendum in Michigan. You could put that on the ballot in 2 years to go decrim like Oregon and take the teeth out of the police to hurt people they don't like. And that would be a wonderful step in 2022 for your activists to work on, would be go Oregon, go Portugal, decrim it so the police have no real incentive to stop your car because all they can do is write a parking ticket.
What do you think about this idea? What if assuming that there's fewer police officers just because one of these things is implemented, there's some reason to have less of it, but you pay them more, okay? You have more training. And there's more accountability because now we've removed legislatively the threshold of qualified immunity. So there's some civil liability. Now, the first, just to argue with myself, because I would like to do that, well, you're going to get a bunch of frivolous lawsuits. They're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to do their job out there. Okay, I get that, but now there's no lawsuits and very difficult, if any, to make your case. Immune from it, essentially. If the from the top down, from the administration down, if they know there's a legitimate case to be had against an officer that gets out of line, or an officer that observes it, and lets it go out of line, and that the department would be financially responsible, they have to carry insurance for this exact reason. They'll have lawyers that will handle it. They will, and there's a bad bunch there's a bad one in the bunch. You're going to get rid of it. You're not going to throw away the whole bunch because you stand by the quality of the institution, and that's, I feel like we don't have that. Obviously the argument has always been that, they'll rally behind each other and protect the blue, thin blue line or whatever. But I'm saying, and that will still always be there. And I'm not saying that shouldn't, I understand the loyalty of the craziness of that job, but I'm saying the fact that, the lack of direct consequential liability, I think, has gotten out of control, and it just has given more of a carte blanche to some of these things that seem so obvious should never be taking place, and it may not even be the individual's fault. I look at it like this: the woman that pulled out the wrong gun and shot the guy instead of the taser. Either one of two things: she's not qualified to be doing whatever she's doing, or she's so burnt out professionally because she's working too hard and she's got something else going on in her life. And she's not paid well. Eliminate all that. Get the best people for the job. I get it. It's tough work. I get it. It's like war and administration and people. It's got a lot of that, But tell me, Howard. Tell me how we're gonna.
Well, and let's back up a step. What you said is true. Let's back up a step and say, police departments across the country. There's 19,000 police departments. Almost all of them are having trouble recruiting good people. Why? Because the reputation of the police in the last 5 years has gone into the toilet, that all we want to do is shoot people, beat them over the head, stupid stuff. So we're having real trouble attracting good people. And that's another aspect, that the drug war just pounds it. All you're going to do as a cop is go out there and bust the Willie Nelsons of the world. And I got better things to do. I don't want to be thought of as a bad guy or an asshole, excuse my French, by becoming a police officer and being thought of as some gorilla out there who just wants to kill people at the drop of a hat. So all of this needs to change. And let's face it, guys, the single greatest arrest in America is simple possession of drugs at 1.4 million. Drunk drivers we arrest around 1.2, 1.3 million. But that's the number one reason we put handcuffs on people is simple drugs. And this is destroying our reputation or whatever, our attraction to have good people go out and say, you know what, I want to protect and serve. I don't want to search and arrest. And so that's why we've got to get rid of this search and arrest mantra and get back to protect and serve and really, honest to God, mean it. And that's why I work so hard in my retirement to say, let's change the system. If you have a drug problem, see a doctor, go to a clinic. Why am I getting involved as a police officer when you got a cocaine problem? This is and has been stupid since day one, 50 years ago.
You reminded me of one of the voices of, on behalf of the law enforcement community, and I think you almost mentioned, who's the sheriff of the county?
Saginaw County.
I don't know. I know it's Federspiel.
Yeah.
But the Lansing's in the county of what?
Ingham County.
Ingham County. The sheriff of Ingham County family's been sheriffs for
Wigglesworth.
Wigglesworth, yeah. You know Wigglesworth?
Oh, Wigglesworth. Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So he's I think he's got a good PR person. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I just say, but during the campaign, I saw him the 2018 proposal one, legalize or treat marijuana like alcohol, regulate like alcohol
right.
in Michigan.
Right.
His public statements were the following: Michigan does not and should not legalize marijuana. Our sheriff's department, our sheriffs do 5 to 6 home calls for psychiatric issues every day. And if you legalize marijuana, this is just going to make us... Now, the first response to that is, why are sheriffs doing, like home calls for people that are having psychiatric issues? Like, that's a disaster. That's like a nightmare, right? Like, they're not trained for that. Like, that's the problem here. You shouldn't be doing that, guys. The argument's over.
And, guys, he's lying through his teeth. 18 years of street cop in the Lansing, mid-Michigan area. 18 years. And I had contact with over 100 police officers, in the county of Clinton, in Ingham County. I had buddies that worked for LPD and Meridian Township, stuff like that. I never talked to one, certainly my 18 years and the rest of my guys, we never went to one call for service generated by the use of marijuana.
I say the same thing,
Wigglesworth
Howard.
was lying through his everything.
Right.
I mean, straight up, 0 calls in 18 years. And most officers go 30-year careers never answering one call based on the use of marijuana. Come on.
Right.
Other than the smell.
There's never been a domestic violence case where the report begins like, showed up at the residence, door was open, walked in, and the victim and the defendant were sitting on the couch smoking a joint. That doesn't happen.
Never happened.
Happen,
Not
no.
one time
No.
in my 20 years, Howard.
And of course, you've got the other adage, which is throw a group of guys a case of beer, they'll start a fight. Throw them a bag of weed, they'll start a band. I'm just kidding.
Right. Yeah, well, this is all true. So Wigglesworth, he was just following the police line of we got to keep that money coming in. The pretext for making a stop for the civil asset forfeiture, he's just part of the industry. And face it, guys, it is an industry.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it is.
1.4 million customers a year, how can you go wrong?
Right. Well, yeah.
It's like I used to joke, when I get older, I want to own a district court. When I grow up, I want to own a district court. They make money. And then if you don't pay, they lock you up. You know what I mean? Like, what great kind of business is that? You know what I mean? Meanwhile, it's Steve Miller's 50th birthday today. Anyway, it looks like he's 40 or 35.
Yay. Ride your bicycle across America.
Steve maintains...
I'll do a motorcycle instead.
No, we're going to bike. We're going to bike. After all that great bike talk, that bike enthusiastic talk, come on, you got to think it through.
Yeah.
So Steve's of the opinion that it's only the top tier, the chiefs, the administrative, the organizational leaders, that if you pulled the street cops and everybody else, they don't like it, that they prefer the other. What do you say to that? You think that the majority...
Yeah. I've only got a little bit of info. I talked at length with a Lansing PD guy. He's a young guy. He was in his late 20s and been a cop for a couple of years. And he told me that he's bullshitting with the guys at the coffee shop that most of the young guys under 40 were going to vote yes for legalizing marijuana. That doesn't surprise me. And it's no surprise that command, lieutenants and above, as you said, are always against it because they are mostly accountants with a gun. They got to make the numbers jump. They got to have that free federal money coming in to for the war on drugs.
He's right.
They know this, and they want that money from civil asset forfeiture, $5.3 billion a year across America. So they're the ones who have to make the department run with the pencils, and they know that the money they bring in from drug enforcement helps fund the department, and fund the courts, and fund everything, and cities make so much money off this stuff, in terms of so they have other obligations, and so rank and file. Now all drugs is a different story, but I've talked to a friend of mine who's a state rep out in Washington State when they had their 4 months of drugs were legal, and he said he's talked to a lot of line officers there. He's on the Judiciary Committee, he's the head of it. And he said he's talked to dozens of police, street cops, like I was, who are saying, you know what, get us out of the drug business. So there is a shift in some places around the country for the younger guys saying, I don't really want to enforce drug law. I want to go catch guys raping somebody or killing somebody or burning down a building. Drunk drivers are, still killing people. Let's focus on that. So there's good news out there, even as command says, let's keep that 84 billion rolling in.
There was that that sheriff out in South Dakota where they passed a citizens initiative out there to legalize marijuana,
right.
And then that sheriff filed suit to fight it, and I think it's still hung up there, which is a damn shame. I mean, the people have spoken, and now this sheriff's going to say no? Are you kidding me?
It's big money. Like the TV show, big money. It's really big money.
Yeah,
money
right.
talks.
I gotta believe that because of a number of different factors, primarily the internet, the vast amount of information we have access to, the vast amount of news, just the momentum of the legalization of marijuana. If I was a young police officer, coming out of the academy today, I gotta believe it's a little more like, versus, when you came out, and whatever the, or Steve, when Steve came out, whatever, and I'm not saying you guys were affected by this, but there was a different time, a different era. This is maybe even political at the time of like where and how you felt about drugs, and we weren't thinking about it in terms of the social impact. I think, and I'm not making excuses for anyone, they're getting trained. I give a lot of deference to the officers themselves. They have to follow the direct command. If the direct command, the philosophy of the direct command is, governmentally, derived to mean drugs are bad. Okay, and you got to stop it. And if you don't, they're going to kill people. So that's what they're being. That's what they're wired with. So you have
right.
And then there was less resistance. There wasn't the same momentum. We aren't evolved to the point where it's an open discussion like we're having right now. For someone to say what we're saying, when Steve came out, would have been absurd. Like no one was talking about that. We were at the height of the Joe Biden war on drugs in the 90s, right? That's that whole, the crime bills and stuff like that. No one was talking about devastation of the community. They were doubling down on the Nixon plan, So the point I'm making is that, it'd be harder, I would think, to impact and wire the younger officers. In fact, Steve, I'm reminded that at a time we were looking at some evidence in an evidence room, marijuana plants and whatnot, and the drug task force main guy was there looking over our shoulder, real intense, quiet, and then he had to leave somewhere. They brought in this 27-year-old kid whose family had been in police his whole life, right? His dad and his grandfather. And he was more of a community police officer thinking he gave two shits about marijuana. And I thought it was more of a generational thing. He's 26, 27. Exactly. You know what I mean? So he came into the police force, at a time when marijuana was medical in Michigan already. There was a time when they were discussing legalization. And, he's read about it in the paper and what. I don't know if they're training. I don't think they're training any different in the police force. I just think his mindset at that time and place in Michigan, like anyone else, there was just more information about it. A different.
Yeah, a generational shift, obviously. When I first came in the 70s, the old guys who had a high school diploma only were getting out, and the guys like me, having a 2 or 4 year degree, were coming in. and we gave most of us just gave two shits about marijuana, because I'd smoked it in college and everybody else had. I mean, they would forever since I was there. They would come to me and says, "Howard, is this any good weed?" And I'd smell it and say, "That's pretty good," or that's just ditch weed or whatever. I mean, and it was a joke. I mean, it was a big joke. And then as I left police work in '94, you had new people coming in who were picking up the idea of a moral crusade to save America from drugs, and it went right into the shitter.
Yeah.
And where it still is mostly today.
Are you saying that because the policing at that time, because there's a certain era in the United States where marijuana wasn't, I mean, like between 69 and 70, 71, before Nixon made it a Schedule I and whatnot, I mean, there's some tolerance to it, right? That's what you talk about, that kind of era. I mean, I don't think, if correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but they ask you if you smoked marijuana in the police admissions application, and if you say yes,
you're probably going to get bumped out because everybody else is going to say no.
And they have no way to...
How do you verify unless you do a deep background like he was talking about, and you're going and talking to old high school friends and things like that?
Right. Everybody lied.
Yeah, everybody lied.
That's what I'm saying. So, because it's odd that they... Like I'd almost think...
Or if they admitted... I tried it once or twice and didn't like it.
Yeah.
I would get that on backgrounds, and and we were hiring people that gave that answer.
Do you know why? Because just think if the defense lawyer knew that you just arrested this guy for possessing marijuana and you smoked it before, what kind of fucking hypocrite are you? You know what I mean? Like that's
right.
You know, that's shit. So they don't want argue they don't want anyone that would ever and expect you to follow through. You know what I mean? I don't know. Am I right, Howard? That's probably the administrative decision.
Yeah, I mean, it was, in fact, in the 70s when I got hired, they didn't even ask the question.
Right.
Because they knew both at going to the academy and getting hired, 9 out of 10 officers had smoked marijuana, high school, college, whatever. And there's no sense in even asking the question to have us lie in the first place. So at least in the 70s, they never even asked the question.
Sounds like they had more common sense back then.
Right.
Sorry?
He said there's more common sense back then. There
was.
But I found it unique that, I don't know, it would be unique to me to think that like within the crew, there's one guy that's like the pot smoker, and they're like, hey, come over, this is good shit, like that's just
true.
But I got it. I just don't, I have seen situations where they call one of the guys in the crew like the deputy dog or something because he's got the best nose. He can always sniff it out and knows where it is. And like go back there, and put your head in on the in-car camera. We'll hear that. Did you smell it? Yeah. We'll smell it on the other side. Like that kind of stuff. But it's an interesting. I don't know, Steve. It wasn't something that's talked about, right? It wasn't. I mean, how could you, right? If you're can't be favorably talked about smoking marijuana.
No.
Can't be right. Can't be taken lightly either. What about this moral crusade? When did that
serious
When did the moral
business.
crusading happen, Howard?
Well, that's always been a part of it and still is. I mean, I've been on religious talk shows and whatnot across the South, and they'll say that the minister will tell you that marijuana should stay illegal because it's going to hurt the body God gave you, and therefore we should keep it illegal. To which the response is, well, you have parishioners who smoke cigarettes, which hurts the body God gave them. Should they be put in jail too? It shuts them up. But even when you win the debate, you don't win the war, because they'll still say, well, I just don't want people hurting themselves, putting drugs in their system. And so keeping them illegal makes me feel better. And that it's like a cloud. You can see it. It can get wet. You can get wet. But it's out there in the days, in all across the country. You'll have this undercurrent of it's immoral to have a mind-altering drug that makes you feel better. And that's just a foe that it's essentially impossible to fight with any rational talk, because it's religion and it's morality versus, 10 kids get shot every day. Yeah, that's immoral too, but I still just not comfortable legalizing drugs to stop 10 kids from getting shot.
Mentioning the religious community, the organizations and leadership, they have not gotten the issue. They haven't really been able to identify it's good for their parishioners that the war on drugs end. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I would even give them an F for failing to be on board here. There's not a lot of it. There's some, but
And a topic just came up, and I've had it before, where I've had people, I've got that T-shirt that says, cops say legalize pot or legalize drugs, and I've had serious black people come up to me and say, yeah, but if we legalize the drugs, then you're going to cut out tens of thousands of high-paying jobs for black youth. What are they going to do? And I don't know if that's a basis for resistance of change, but black leaders, both religious and governmental, often fight something like decrim or legalization because they think it's going to be worse. And there will. It'll, as I said, we got 1 million teenagers selling drugs. Those jobs go away, and that's billions and billions in wages for inner city black youth, brown youth. So is it an issue? No one's ever studied it, but it's an interesting idea.
You've heard this more than once?
Yeah.
You've heard it more than once? I mean, that's it. That seems, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this is a multifaceted problem, guys.
Right.
And the trouble is, essentially across America, nobody is discussing the war on drugs in the macro. Is war on drugs a good idea? There has never been in 50 years a hearing in the United States Congress that is this a good policy to make all these drugs illegal? Has the specific strategy of war on drugs by arresting 52 million people in 50 years, is this a good idea? Neither Republicans nor Democrats want to study the issue because the answer is going to be an absolutely, of course it's not working. Of course it's not a good policy. Look at all the damage it does. But your Democrats and Republicans don't want to touch it. It's not just a third rail, it's a fourth or fifth. I mean, it is completely unacceptable to talk about it. Nobody does. In the macro.
Wow.
It's like, not even close, but what came to mind was there really wasn't any weapons of mass destruction, by the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I understand politics. I've been doing it now full time for 15 years in Congress. But basically, there's no easy answer other than we've got to start thinking of legalize, regulate all drugs. And they just think they're going to lose their position over it. And earlier that was true, but we've seen major changes in thinking across America, including my friends in Oklahoma. 5 years ago, they defelonized simple possession. And the sheriffs and the police and the courts, the judges, everybody fought it because they said you should go to jail for 3 or 4 years for simple possession of crack or meth or whatever. The good people of Oklahoma, super conservative, had more compassion and said no more than 12 months in a county jail if you have simple possession. And my friends there tell me that if they have a decrim on the ballot along with legalization of marijuana, they both will pass. So it is getting better. Try to be a little optimistic here at the end, but there's still a long road to go to get America to say the whole thing is stupid. Let's throw it away and start over with some type of legalized, regulated system like we had in 1914 when this whole nonsense began.
What is the estimated impact of users? I mean, what are the number of users percentage-wise? So let's say we got the cannabis consuming, population countrywide. Yeah. Do we got a statistic on that?
Well, and nowadays with legalization, you have more people admitting to it.
Right.
But it's like gay people. There's only one gay person 40 years ago in America, Liberace.
Right.
And now there's tens of millions. You got to be careful. But my best estimates out there, somewhere in the area of 10% of adults use cannabis on a regular basis. Cocaine and such, it's down into the 1% or so. Heroin, actually heroin now is almost 1% with the current problem.
And like the other opioids and whatnot.
Opioids, yeah.
But I just want to scale it because, if we legalize heroin and cocaine and we're assuming that, and other drugs, we're assuming that there's a population that's going to use them anyways. What does that number look like? If we're going to really try to see for it, and if they're going to use it anyways, and it's not going to be a crime, and there's a chance that we may get them healthy, instead of using the criminal justice system. I'm just wondering, like, what's the side impact? Then it's not like anything they're doing is going to fix it. So, I just wonder, like, what is that number? Do you think it's like 1% probably?
Yeah, well,
of everybody
what's
else?
important to realize, heroin being the most prevalent of getting, 70,000 died last year from an overdose, 200 today did. And if you're familiar with these people who use heroin, fentanyl, et cetera, essentially none of them woke up this morning saying, it's a good day to die. No, they got a hot shot. They took a little too much and they died. And to put in perspective, the Swiss, the most advanced country in the world on the issue of heroin treatment, they've given out over 10 million doses of pure pharmaceutical grade heroin to their patients at a clinic in the last 26 years. How many have died? Zero. Because heroin is as dangerous as the whiskey I drink on Fridays and Saturday nights. If I drink the whole bottle, I won't wake up. So I only have about 3 or 4 shots every Friday and every Saturday because I like the taste. But I can drink it responsibly and safely. And people in Switzerland take their heroin safely and they live another day and another day and another day. So if the more you know, the more you're going to say, boy, there's certainly a better way to do it.
That's interesting. I know there's always been that edict of, would you rather have your neighbor who uses heroin have his or her supply or not have his or her supply, right?
If you've ever talked to a heroin addict, they'll tell you they will sell their mother to get a next fix. They'll sell anything to get their next fix.
That's what I'm saying. So you'd rather them have it so they're not breaking into your house. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah.
What about cocaine?
Like
how are we going to deal with cocaine?
Cocaine is as dangerous as whiskey, but if it's pure cocaine, you'll have a couple thousand people die every year. We have two teenagers overdose on alcohol every week in this country. There's no perfect solution, guys. Right. These drugs are dangerous. They're deadly, either short-term, long-term. And if you make a mistake, nature will, Darwin will take care of you. But my concern is to have public safety, make America in general fine. And like they say, if you have a drug problem, the doctor. And that's what we need to return to.
Absolutely.
Full stop.
Howard, I have to say, that response that you gave was like an uppercut with like a sharp tongue in it. Seriously. I was asking you about cocaine, and you came with like, listen, 2 teenagers die every weekend from alcohol. Love it. What a great response, right? I mean, let's just put it all in perspective.
Sorry about that. Yeah. But I mean, cocaine is a dangerous drug.
I know, but you're right.
But if people get addicted to it, but most consumers of cocaine, my understanding is like 95% never develop problematic use of cocaine. 95%.
Yeah.
And certainly my generation, my older brothers used it in Colorado when they were ski bums, and they knew dozens and dozens of people. None of them ever developed a problematic use of cocaine. So, and of course, the whole fallacy of the crack cocaine babies was BS. So we need an information campaign to educate all these people, and then at the end of the day, overcome the police resistance, the prosecutors, the drug treatment industry, and of course, my friends in the religious industry. It can be done. We're making progress all over America on many fronts. We just got to keep at it.
I think the churches and the religious institutions may be the idea where we are going to launch the suppliers of these decriminalized drugs. Put that in their heads. See if they want to come around on that.
I'm
just kidding. I don't know. I mean, nothing else has worked, right? I just say like
nothing exactly.
Listen, Howard, I could go on all night. You are a lot of fun to talk to. I love the banter and the dialogue, and you got a lot of good stories and great ideas. Thanks. I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. Anyone want to? Where do we go? Steve.
Yes, sir.
Give Howard some love as we let him go into the evening here.
Howard, thank you so much for coming on again. It's always great to listen to you, especially you were a local officer here like I was, so it's always good to hear from you and get the pulse on what's going on in Washington, because it's always fun.
Yeah, and I'll just say that it doesn't look good in Washington in terms of anything major. In terms of whether marijuana related or really anything else. The deadlock is bad, as you've read it in the papers.
Yeah.
And I don't see getting any better on any issue, including drug policy reform. Biden, as you know, is never going to cheerlead any changes. we can, like I say, he will sign the legislation, but I don't expect it to get to his desk, and he will certainly not cheerlead it and lobby it through Congress because he believes in the drug war. He still thinks it's a good idea, or he will never admit in public he made a mistake.
Yeah.
So maybe 22.
We'll see.
Okay.
All right.
Guys,
well,
it's been
thanks
a hoot.
again. Yes, absolutely, sir. It's
Thank
always
you.
great to have you on.
All right. You guys take care.
All right, you too. Thanks, Howard.
Live well.
All right. I think that's a wrap, buddy.
I was going to see if
You want to wrap it?
I'm going to ask him to encourage you to get a bike. Talk more about bike enthusiasts, which we will discuss.
And then we'll ride across
further.
the country.
Yeah. Want to talk about clearing the brain for a little while.
We'd probably have.
When your legs are burning and all you want to do is fall over and and you got to go on. It's quite.
I can imagine. I can imagine.
He's 70 years old.
I know.
I was going to ask him what body part hurt the most. That was my other question I was going to ask. Hamstrings.
He's done it. He's been out working the
Triceps get sore because you're leaning on the bike. The whole
Yeah.
time, if you're not on it right, you do like this. Saddle sores happen.
You need a whole lot of cannabis on that trip.
Yeah, you need some salves.
You
and
would
stuff.
need some oil.
You need a
heavy amounts of oil.
Yeah,
because you
lotions.
got to have to recover. You got to have quick recovery, and you can
You
get.
might you might need a masseur. Just kidding.
Probably.
Maybe a full-time masseur. All right, listen. We're way past that time of evening.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for listening. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed talking to her. We got to get him back next week. He should be a regular, actually.
That'd be
See what
great.
you can do
huh?
about that. Good job booking him.
All right. I try. When I try, I get a good one.
Is Dan still here? Because I was going to give him.
I think so.
All right, very good. All right, listen. Thanks everyone for listening. Like us on Facebook and YouTube.
Like us and subscribe.
Please do that if
like
you
us
can.
and subscribe.
And if you left some questions that we didn't address because Amanda had to leave because her dog was breaking the law, we'll try to answer them next week. Until then, we'll talk to you then.
All right.
The Planet Green Trees Show.
Join the Michigan Medical Marijuana Association today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org. The MMMA is focused on the well-being and safety of medical marijuana patients. The MMMA site provides the most comprehensive and up-to-date news on legal issues, politics, research, cultivation, as well as the various strange products and methods of cannabis use. Come join the discussion with the most knowledgeable and passionate advocates in Michigan today, michiganmedicalmarijuana.org.
Before you plead, call me, Attorney Michael Komorn.
An important and historical farm crop in American agriculture is returned after having been classified as a controlled substance and illegal. On December 20th, 2018, the President signed the Farm Bill, also known as the Agriculture Improvement Act of 2018, into law. The signing of the act was great news for the hemp industry, which amended the definition of marijuana in the Federal Controlled Substances Act. Hemp is now defined as the plant, Cannabis sativa L, and any part of the plant, growing or not, with less than 0.3% THC concentration on a dry basis. The plant itself is no longer a controlled substance. Hemp is one of the most versatile plants on earth. From clothing, fiber, paper, building materials, hempcrete, biofuels, CBD, and medical uses, it has been a part of America's industry for over 200 years. Even the United States Constitution was drafted on hemp paper. The time is now. If you're thinking of getting in the farming or processing of hemp, contact our global experts, legal, and consultation teams to make sure that you're on the right road when you venture into the new hemp industrial revolution. Michigan Hemp Industries has been a leader and advocate for the return of the hemp industry. So come be a part of the new revolution in agriculture in Michigan.